you can score higher on the GRE, and understanding the quantitative section of the GRE will help. The math you will see in the GRE Quantitative Reasoning sections doesn't go higher than college-level algebra. There are actually only about 25 different math concepts that are frequently encountered in the GRE Quantitative Reasoning section. So, there is a level of predictability that you can start to see if you practice enough. You are pressed for time, 35 minutes to complete 20 questions in each quantitative reasoning section. So, just plugging in answer choices or using the on-screen calculator too often may not be the most efficient way to get the correct answer. In addition to becoming familiar with the questions on the GRE, you will need to be a very careful reader, as the wording of the problems in the quantitative section is meant to test your observation skills. There are different types of questions that you should become familiar with. The first is the quantitative comparisons, like the one shown. For these comparison questions, the answer choices will always be the same. A is greater than B. B is greater than A. C, the two quantities are equal, A equals B. D, there is not enough information, so you can't tell which is greater than the other. As an example, look at the following question. On your computer screen, you might see quantity A is x plus 1/4, and quantity B is y plus 1/2. Now, initially, we tend to focus on the 1/4 and the 1/2, and we think, well, 1/4 is smaller than 1/2, and so we may be quick to think, oh, well, B must be greater than A. But notice that does not make sense here, because at the very top, they tell us that x is greater than or equal to 0, and y is greater than or equal to 0. So you could think of one scenario where these two values would be equal. Or you could think of a scenario where A would be greater than B. Or you could think of a scenario where B is greater than A. When that happens, we know that there is not enough information to determine the relationship. If you have trouble seeing those relationships and the fact that this does not work out nicely, you could plug in a number. So if I plug in the same number for x and y, for x, I would have, say, 2 plus 1/4. And if I plugged in that same value here, 2 plus 1/2, in that scenario, I can see that B is greater than A. However, if I went on an extreme and say I plugged in 10 for x, and I still plugged in 2 for y, I can see that now A is greater than B. And that ambiguity is what tells us that the relationship cannot be determined from the information given. There are also standard multiple choice questions and multiple choice questions that ask you to choose one or more. Remember to read the questions carefully, especially if there are instructions to choose all that apply. There will be charts, graphs, and figures or illustrations, and it is important to know that what you see may not be drawn to scale. Remember, do not assume pictures are accurate representations of distances and angles. There are strategies that you can learn to help you avoid bad answer choices, and nothing beats good old practice. Remember, most errors on the quantitative reasoning sections are due to not reading the instructions, questions, and answer choices correctly. And lower scores are often associated with test takers who aren't able to finish the test. You can score higher on the GRE. We have GRE prep seminars throughout the year that you can take to help you. Registration links are below.